Well, as Colin Flynn mentioned earlier, today marks the Feast of the Presentation of the Lord and the annual celebration of the World Day of Prayer for Consecrated Life.
Abbiamo bisogno della coraggiosa pazienza di camminare, di esplorare strade nuove.
In his homily, the Holy Father invited religious men and women to look to the patience of God and to the patience of Simeon, who awaited the fulfillment of the Lord's promises as they consider their own lives of consecration. Joining me now on Skype is Sister Mary Richard, Little Sisters of the Poor Novice Mistress for the provinces of the U.S. and Vocations Director for the Brooklyn Province. Sister, welcome. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. First off, if you don't mind, could you please tell us a little bit about your personal journey and your path to your work now with the Little Sisters of the Poor?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Tracy. My journey started early on, I would say, because I grew up in an Irish Catholic home that was very practicing. We didn't talk a lot about our faith, but very early on, I remember having a sense of having been created by God and thinking, well, it makes all the sense in the world to give myself back to Him somehow, but it was very vague until in high school. My uncle, who was a priest, was named chaplain of the Little Sisters of the Poor, Home for the Elderly. And so I began to volunteer with the Little Sisters, and I was drawn to their humble, hidden life at the service of these elderly people who were alone and needy. And it was a beautiful life I saw, but still there was an attraction in me for contemplative life and cloistered life. And that was kind of a conflict until one day I slipped in the back of the chapel before I left the home, and I saw a little sister at prayer, a little sister who was very, very busy, the only nurse in the house at that time. And her attitude at prayer just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I said, aha, there's no reason why you can't be a contemplative and be a little sister of the poor. In fact, I've learned since you have to be, because you need to see Jesus in the elderly poor. So that resolved my issue.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. So beautiful. I'm wondering, as you counsel women, what do you hear most from those that are discerning a vocation?
I hear their desire to give themselves completely to the Lord, their desire to take care of the poor, their desire to be in community, but also a certain anxiety about committing oneself the whole life. I think perhaps that could come from the fact that they've had some religious education, but maybe haven't really been led into a deep relationship with Jesus that would inspire trust. You're giving your whole life to Him. It requires a lot of trust. And then another obstacle sometimes that they're dealing with is the opposition of their families.
I want to talk about the pandemic, and of course that's been challenging for so many, and I'm sure it certainly presented challenges for you as well. Can you talk to us about how your faith helps you respond during these times?
Yes, this has been a very challenging time, especially, as you know, for elderly people in homes for the elderly who are separated from their families. So for us as little sisters, our trust in the Lord that inspired our vocation to begin with helps us a lot, because we're being called on to, like everybody, to trust Him with our life. And in our work with the residents, again, we have to try to be very present to them, to try to ease their loneliness that they're feeling without their families, with all the uncertainties that they're facing. But at the same time, our faith helps us to discern Jesus in them. And they're like the Simeons and Annas in our lives. And this has been a beautiful time, actually, of being maybe closer to the residents. And also, we're very inspired by the love that this has drawn forth from so many people who have been reaching out to us and to a lot of people in need.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. That's true. It really has been a time for a lot of us to get closer in many ways. Sister Mary Richard, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for what you do. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too.